plane crash over the Mediterranean. EgyptAir Flight 804 goes down with 66 people on board. What we're learning about the investigation. A major defense bill goes beyond the military. How it could be used to help vulnerable Christians. Families come to Washington to share their stories about opioid addiction.
I wish I wasn't here. I wish I didn't have to be here.
What they're doing to increase awareness across the country. And the Pope reaches out to other faiths. We'll talk about his upcoming meeting on EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, May 19th, 2016. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Investigators believe terrorism may be to blame for the Egyptian Flight 804 crash. The plane disappeared over the Mediterranean Sea during a flight from Paris to Cairo. 66 people were on board.
If you analyze this situation properly, the possibility of having a different action aboard, of having a terror attack, is higher than having a technical problem.
Chilling words echoing around the globe as investigators search for answers in the disappearance of EgyptAir Flight 804. It vanished from radar shortly after entering Egyptian airspace Thursday morning.
We confirmed that the wreckage has been found, and the search and rescue teams are now, it's turning into a search and recovery.
Although there were no U.S. citizens among the 66 people on board.
The U.S. military has reached out to counterparts in Greece and Egypt to offer our support.
A Navy aircraft has joined the search, and U.S. intelligence is talking with its French and Egyptian counterparts. So far, they haven't found any passengers' names that are on terror watch lists. Flight 804 left Paris Wednesday night, headed for Cairo, and everything appeared normal, until Greek officials say they lost contact with the cockpit just before the plane appeared to plummet thousands of feet and then disappeared.
It's too early to definitively say what may have caused this disaster.
But the U.S. government's working theory is that this was an act of terror. The initial suspicion is that a bomb brought down the plane. French officials say the plane passed a security sweep before taking off from Paris. EgyptAir maintains they have good security.
We are part of an international organization, and we abide by international security laws.
Clare Lopez is a former CIA officer and the Vice President for Research and Analysis at the Center for Security Policy. Clare, this is still developing. Why do you think it's terrorism?
Well, there are similarities, I think, unfortunately, between the disappearance of this aircraft, as we call it now, a crash of this aircraft, and, for instance, what happened to the Russian civilian airliner over the Sinai Peninsula this past October 2015, where it was blown out of the sky and debris landed in the Sinai Desert.
What is the political and terror climate like there?
Well, what I will mention is that just a few days ago, earlier this week, the Islamic State issued an online video threat explicitly against France, chillingly using two young boys to issue this threat against France. As you have killed our brothers, they said, we will kill you.
But there were few French people who were on that plane.
About 15 of the total were French, about 30 were Egyptian, and the rest, one or two from many other countries, but no Americans.
So why target that plane then? Why would terrorists do that?
Well, it may be a factor of where they had access. In other words, from the airport Charles de Gaulle in Paris. We don't know that yet.
Sure.
But looking at it, it seems logical that someone on the ground, perhaps, probably not a passenger, but someone on the ground in Paris may have had access to that plane to get some kind of an explosive on board.
In the White House briefing room today, Josh Earnest was asked about this and about security measures across the country here, but also around the globe. Is there a difference between U.S. security measures and others, say, at de Gaulle?
Well, you know, in all of the airports around the world, since these recent disasters and since the bomb maker, for instance, the Saudi-born Ibrahim al-Asiri, has been concocting these very sophisticated bombs, security has been stepped up markedly.
Around the world.
Around the world. But obviously, there are still those who have access. And I will mention, unfortunately, that even if you go around American U.S. airports, you will see any number of visibly Sharia-compliant Muslims in all kinds of positions, including TSA, and with access to the baggage and to the planes themselves.
Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. The House approves a $602 billion defense bill, which includes help for Christians and other religious minorities. Jason Calvi reports from Capitol Hill. Jason.
Lauren, the House is on a collision course with the White House, which has promised a veto. The House vote last night was not entirely on party lines. 40 Democrats joined with all but 5 Republicans to pass the National Defense Authorization Act. The defense spending bill calls for a minimum of 9,800 troops in Afghanistan, going against the administration's planned cuts. And it would fund more weapons, ships, and fighter jets, shifting $18 billion from the war fund. But the Pentagon says it didn't request that. The House spent hours voting on amendments to attach to the bill, including 2 proposed by Nebraska Republican Jeff Fortenberry. Both would help Christians and other religious minorities in Iraq.
Look at where we were, from nothing just a few short months ago to lamenting and weeping and regretting what is happening to innocent people, to a declaration of genocide, now a stated policy goal of creating safety for these people and the possibility of creating security units that are their own.
The Fortenberry amendments list policy goals. It's the job of the president, Pentagon, and generals to put them into action. One calls for the creation of safe areas so Christians and other religious minorities can return to their homelands. The second says local Iraqi militias, including Christian militias, should be supported to defend their people.
So overarching policy, but it doesn't actually say, $5 million, or it doesn't give a money percentage.
That's correct.
Being the chair, the ayes have it, and block amendments are agreed to.
Texas Democrat Sheila Jackson Lee backed an amendment that would require the Secretary of Defense to report how the U.S. is helping Nigeria fight Boko Haram, an Islamic terrorist group that kidnapped Nigerian schoolgirls.
My amendment, my sense of Congress, is to give us focus to bring back the girls, save these girls. We have the information. Bring back these girls.
The Senate has their own version, which goes against the House proposal. We're expecting that vote as early as next week. Lauren?
Jason, why were so many Democrats against this defense bill?
Lauren, there are so many reasons why they were against it. The White House had a 17-page memo blasting the Republican proposal. But just to give you one example, Democrats had hoped to allow Guantanamo Bay prisoners to be brought here to the United States. Republicans quashed that proposal.
Jason Calvi reporting live on Capitol Hill. Jason, thank you. Shouts of shame interrupted the House chamber today. Democrats are upset that 7 Republicans switched their votes to defeat a gay rights bill. The bill would have upheld an executive order that bars federal contractors from discriminating against gay and lesbian employees. The final vote against the bill, 213 to 212. The Senate approves a $1.1 billion plan to combat the Zika virus. That sets the stage for difficult negotiations with House Republicans. The House passed a separate $622 million Zika bill yesterday. The White House requested 3 times that amount and says the House plan does not provide enough money to protect the American people. Oklahoma lawmakers pass a bill that could put abortion doctors behind bars. It's considered the first bill of its kind in the nation. It says any doctor who performs an abortion in Oklahoma could be charged with a felony and face up to 3 years in prison. The doctors would also lose their state medical license. The bills now head to the Republican governor's desk. More than 100 families who have lost loved ones to a drug overdose gather in Washington. They're calling for action against the growing opioid epidemic. Wyatt Goolsby reports from Capitol Hill. Wyatt.
Lauren, throughout the day, the families have been meeting with high-ranking lawmakers. They're supporting a series of bills aimed at curbing opioid addiction. They also say it's important for them to track across the country just to make sure people know about the crisis.
I'm very concerned with the generation of people, not only the generation we're losing, but the generation of people that are being left behind.
It's a difficult day for Jennifer Kelly. During a gathering of more than 100 families of opioid overdose victims, she couldn't hold the tears back.
It's really hard to hear the other stories because I relate and I know how they feel.
Kelly, who traveled to D.C. today from Connecticut, says she prays every day for her daughter Justice. In August, during a battle with depression, the 22-year-old overdosed on heroin and lost consciousness. A lack of oxygen damaged her brain, leaving her in a permanent vegetative state. Justice represents one of the dozens of Americans who have lost their battle with addiction. Sarah Ahern lost 2 cousins to heroin overdoses.
This brings up a lot of emotions for me because in my family we currently have 5 who currently struggle with addiction that are alive.
Ahern's community has been hit hard by the drug epidemic in western Massachusetts. The crisis has become so widespread, the House passed more than a dozen bills aimed at prevention, drug treatment, and support for recovering addicts. It also prompted discussions with medical experts from across the country. TV's Dr. Oz says right now, 1 in 3 families has a direct tie to opioid abuse. He describes it as a slippery slope.
Prescription pain medications, incredibly powerful ways of dulling your mind to the pain your body's experiencing, unfortunately also create a scenario where if you take the pain medications for too long, when you try to stop taking them, your pain, if you did have any, gets much, much worse.
And it's why parents like Jennifer Kelly continue to pray, not only for her family, but for all those who are suffering. Many of the families are reminding lawmakers it's important not only to pass new laws that will help curb opioid addiction, but it's also important to fund them. Democrats have accused Republicans of not including enough guaranteed funding in these bills, but Republicans have responded saying this is really just a first step and their work is far from over. Lauren?
Wyatt Goolsby on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Wyatt. Donald Trump is gaining ground against Hillary Clinton in the polls. A new Rasmussen poll shows Trump with a 5-point lead over Clinton, and a different poll from Fox News gives him a 3-point lead. But if Trump faces off with Bernie Sanders in a general election, Sanders wins. The Fox poll shows he would be 4 points ahead of Trump. President Obama's Supreme Court nominee, Chief Judge Merrick Garland, meets with 2 more Democratic senators. Republican leaders continue to say they will not hold confirmation hearings. They want the next president to fill the seat vacated by the late Justice Antonin Scalia. Some conservatives are praising Donald Trump's list of 11 potential Supreme Court picks. We're told several Republican lawmakers who haven't endorsed Trump say the list goes a long way to quell their concerns if he's elected president.
The Supreme Court list that came out yesterday was extraordinarily well received in our conference. Some of our members know many, if not all, of the people on that list, and while that's not the definitive list, there may be other names that would be out there. This would be indicative of what Donald Trump would be doing. It was a collaborative list.
Stephanos Bibas is the director of the Supreme Court Clinic at the University of Pennsylvania Law School. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This is a guide. Does not mean that Donald Trump is going to ever nominate these people. And his critics are saying they're the most extreme conservatives on the federal bench and in the state Supreme Court. Is that true?
That's not fair. A lot of these people are known to be very thoughtful, brilliant. Half of them clerked at the Supreme Court. People like Ray Kethledge or Steve Colleton are known to be thoughtful, conservative, but fair and grounded in the law.
Let's turn to pro-life issues. You know, he had joked earlier that he would nominate his sister, Marianne Trump Barry, who is pro-abortion, and that was a joke. So he has put on the list 2 other people. William Pryor, he denounced Roe v. Wade, saying it gives constitutional right to murder an unborn child. And then Raymond Grunder permitted South Dakota to enforce a law that has doctors say that terminating the life of a whole, separate, unique, living human being, that's what doctors had to say. So it seems like he does have some very pro-life candidates here.
Some of them, many of them haven't taken a stance on those specific issues. What they all have in common is they're all known to be pretty conservative and grounded in the law, judges not making up law or rights but applying it. And that's their general, the theme that they all share.
Right. Can he be counted to pick people like this? I mean, Donald Trump has said in the past that everything is negotiable.
Well, it's an open question. Republican and conservative voters understandably care a lot about this, and for 2 months have been asking him to give some assurances, and so this is an assurance, but he's left himself some wiggle room. At the same time, he's also taken into account some of the geography of politics, that there are states in the Midwest. He has judges from Iowa and from Michigan, for example, and judges in the South, places like Texas, where there are electoral as well as political and legal reasons to name them. But
that's what candidates do, is they make decisions both based on content and based on politics. There's a tweet that we found from Justice Don Willett, and it was a Donald Trump haiku. He said, "Who would the Donald name to SCOTUS? The mind reels, weeps, can't finish tweet." Now, this is a justice. Was this a mistake?
Judges and justices don't generally tweet, and they probably shouldn't be tweeting, especially on political topics. They need to be above the politics.
Right. All right. Thank you very much. Stephanos Bibas is the director of the Supreme Court Clinic at the University of Pennsylvania Law School. Coming up, Pope Francis reaches out to a Muslim leader, the significance of their upcoming meeting, and gender debate, a Catholic response to the Obama administration's new policy on transgender students. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. The Polish Army will help provide security for World Youth Day in Poland. Pope Francis plans to address more than 2 million students expected at the event in Krakow this July. The Army says it will set up a field hospital to calm concerns that the city can't guarantee safety for the crowds. And Pope Francis says employers who exploit their workers for their own profit are committing a mortal sin.
Pensiamo a questo dramma di oggi, lo sfruttamento della gente.
The Holy Father says this type of exploitation is a modern-day form of slavery. He says those who exploit workers are no different than the human traffickers of the past who enslaved Africans and sold them in the Americas. Ed Pentin is the Rome correspondent for the National Catholic Register. Ed, Pope Francis really showed his feisty side this morning, calling people who exploit workers bloodsuckers. Is this in response to something?
Well, it's just very much in keeping with the way Pope Francis sees this issue. He's very concerned about employment rights, those who are unemployed. He says that youth unemployment is one of the greatest evils of our time, and he's very concerned about the fact that the poor are getting obviously a very raw deal, and he sees this as a great ill of today's capitalist society.
It comes on the day after the White House has increased rules on overtime here in order to help the poor. You know, the Vatican also announced today that the Pope will receive an imam on Monday. What do you know about that meeting?
Yeah, this is a very historic meeting. It's the first time that a Pope has met the Grand Imam of Al-Aqsa University in Cairo, which is it's the foremost Sunni Islam academic institution. Some call it the closest equivalent to a sort of Islamic Vatican. So it's a very important meeting. It's taking place on Monday. They've always had relations with the Vatican, but this is the first time a Pope has actually met the Grand Imam. And so it's something that the Imam has wanted. It's something Pope Francis has wanted, and so it's the fruit of dialogue and meetings leading up to this point.
Thank you, Ed. Ed Pentin is the Rome correspondent for the National Catholic Register. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Lauren.
House Speaker Paul Ryan says the federal government should not get involved in the transgender bathroom debate.
I see this as a federalism issue. This should be left up to the states, and the federal government ought to respect that.
Gayle Trotter is a political analyst, commentator, and attorney. Welcome to the program, Gayle.
Great to be with you, Lauren.
You've read through this Obama administration bathroom directive. What stands out to you?
President Obama's bathroom directive is wrong in 3 ways. It's wrong on the law, it's wrong on the principle of federalism, and it's wrong on the policy. If you look at the law, it's trying to reinterpret or rewrite a law that for over 40 years did not include transgender people under sex discrimination. It's wrong on the principle of federalism because the idea is that schools are locally controlled by the parents who place their children in those schools and also by the states. And it's also wrong on the policy. You have to balance the safety and security of all the children in the schools, and reasonable accommodations can be made, but President Obama is short-circuiting that entire discussion.
And you're agreeing with Speaker Ryan, as he just said, that this is a state's issue, essentially.
I think Speaker Ryan could speak more forcefully against this. There were 73 members of the Republican Study Committee who have challenged the Department of Education head to say, why is the Obama administration pushing this politically correct agenda? I think there could be a strong response from the Congress, especially those who care about the rule of law. But Speaker Ryan is trying to deflect it, I think, through that comment.
You think that he's not strong enough, he's not standing up to this. And he's not mentioning safety either. I mean, that's something that I think you have written about and you've talked about in this issue. What role does it play?
It's very important because we know that there are 4 major risks of this type of policy. The first is that you would have peeping Toms, and it's not just bathrooms, it's also changing facilities, locker rooms, any time that children are staying overnight in another place, or dorm rooms. So you have to consider the safety for peeping Toms, sexual assault, video surveillance, and also rape is a possibility.
Well, as a mother of 6, I know that this is also very important to you. Safety is. Gayle Trotter, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you.
Up next, female lawmakers take the lead in promoting pro-life legislation, why it makes a difference across several states. And a prehistoric discovery. Check out the new horned dinosaur. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. The CBS News veteran 60 Minutes correspondent who profiled Mother Angelica in the early days of EWTN has died. Morley Safer sat down with Mother Angelica in 1984. They talked about her desire to start this TV network and the hurdles she had to overcome. Safer announced his retirement a week ago after reporting more than 900 stories. He was there at CBS 60 Minutes for 46 years. It's not clear what led to his death. Safer was 84 years old. We've seen a series of pro-life wins across the nation this week, including a South Carolina bill banning abortions after 19 weeks of pregnancy. Female lawmakers played a crucial role to push this legislation forward. Joining us now is Marilyn Musgrave. She's a former U.S. representative from Colorado, and she now serves as the director of the Susan B. Anthony List's National Pro-Life Women's Caucus. That's a long title. Thank you for joining us.
Well, I'm very happy to be here, and we're so delighted that South Carolina is the 17th state to pass the 20-week ban. That's more than halfway through the pregnancy, at the point at which the unborn child can feel pain.
Who were the women lawmakers who pushed forward this bill?
We have great women there, Donna Hicks, Wendy Nanny, 2 state representatives that worked very hard to navigate the waters and pass this bill. And another great thing is we have a pro-life woman as governor of
Nikki
South
Haley.
Carolina. Yes.
Do you expect her to sign this?
I expect her to sign it, and very soon.
Oh, that's
very good news.
Before you were a politician, you were a pro-life activist. How did that shape you as a lawmaker?
You know, I was one of those women that had small children. I took the fetal models to the fair and other activities, and I championed abstinence education and worked hard for life. You know, I had my pro-life stand down pat before I was ever elected to office, and I am just thrilled to see these strong pro-life leaders, these women around the country who really have a very unique voice on this issue, championing life.
Well, and they're certainly up against it, aren't they? Because the majority of women who are in Congress and who are holding these positions are not pro-life.
Well, their numbers are growing, though. More and more pro-life women are being elected. And the interesting thing is when you poll something like Unborn Child Pain Capable Act, women in higher numbers than men around this country support that. So these actions of these great pro-life leaders are really reflecting the views of the country that we should end brutal late-term abortion.
And what does this counter? How does this counter the war on women message?
Well, it counters the war on women message in that we know Many of the unborn children whose lives are ended in the womb are female. We know that the Unborn Child Pain Capable Act, again, is supported by women in higher numbers. And we see this championed not only in South Carolina, but in South Dakota by a young state senator, Jenna Hager. We see this championed in Kentucky by a woman. We see women in Indiana, Missouri, Florida,
all over the country, yeah,
working to defund Planned Parenthood and stand for life.
Thank you so much, Marilyn Musgrave, for joining us.
Wonderful to be here.
A new dinosaur species has been discovered in Montana. Dinosaur enthusiast Dr. Bill Shipp literally stumbled upon the fossil. Researchers say the plant-eating horned dinosaur looks like a triceratops, but it's not. Even though they're not sure of the sex, they named it Judith, since it was found near the Judith River. The new dinosaur will be put on display at the Canadian Museum of Nature in Ottawa. I think it should be here, right? For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Good night, and God bless you.